joining us on the Occupy Democrats Network, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Twitch, everywhere. And I want to remind everybody, if you're watching on the Occupy Democrats Network, even if you're not, wherever you are, in your car, anywhere, click on that subscribe button. It's only $5 a month. And with that, you get some personal private shows from me and better access into PTL. And you're also supporting our show. So go ahead and click on that. I guess you could call it subscribe button on the Occupy Democrats Network. We have a big show lined up for you today. Very popular conservative. We might not agree on a number of issues, although we had a very nice conversation yesterday. You might have heard of this guy before. Very popular on social media. His name is Carmine Sabia. He's an American influencer, a media personality, very outspoken Christian and conservative beliefs. He's going to be joining us coming up here in just a couple minutes, and we're going to be talking about a number of issues. So it's going to be entertaining, and as I mentioned, it's going to be coming up here in just a few minutes. Carmine is going to be joining us. Also, Roger Stone owes me an apology, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. He tweeted at me last week saying, "Where's this tape of me threatening to kill Democrats in office?" Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The tape is out. Roger Stone is lying again, denying again. The tape is out. We're going to play it for you a little bit later on in the program as well. So as I mentioned, today is Martin Luther King Day. A day to remember Martin Luther King. He is a hero. And what he did for minorities in the world, quite frankly. And we remember him. The I Have a Dream speech. You know, I remember the first time I heard that speech when I was in like first grade, and it's never left my mind since. You know, on a day like Martin Luther King Day, and I'm listening to this new bill being put forth by this right-wing buffoon. His name is Jason Brodeur. You might have heard about this. This new bill has been introduced by this, shocker, white Republican. And in this new bill, if you call somebody a racist and it's deemed defamatory, even if that person uses their scientific and religious beliefs to say something racist, you can be sued, or I should say you can be fined, not sued, up to $35,000. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot make this stuff up. A white, right-wing Republican conservative in Florida. What is Mr. Jason Brodeur doing to fight racism? I would venture to guess probably nothing. What is he doing to fight hate crimes or make a hate crime more punishable? But what this guy is doing in Florida, because they want to talk about freedom of speech, right? We should have the freedom to say what we want. Well, guess what? If you're a white Republican in Florida, you only want to take away freedom of speech if somebody calls out actual racism. Because if you call somebody a racist, now there's a bill that's being introduced where you can be fined up to $35,000. I find that very interesting. What about if you say something that's racist? What if you call somebody the N-word? What if you're a Klansman in Florida who calls a black person the N-word, which is obviously deplorable and disgusting? What if you decide to do that? Is anybody putting forth any bills in Florida to fine those people? Because it's interesting. This guy, Jason Brodeur, I haven't seen anything out of his offices putting forth any bills to help minorities, people that are the victims of hate crimes. But on this day, Martin Luther King Day, I wonder how Martin Luther King would feel about that. If you call out racism or call somebody a racist, whether it's true or not, you can be fined up to $35,000. Well, I'll venture this, and listen, I've already invited Jason Brodeur to come on the show, but if he wants to fine me $35,000, he can. I'm going to venture a guess, and I'm talking to you, Jason Brodeur, out of Florida, Mr. Republican conservative, that you just might be a racist. I mean, I could be wrong on that, right? I could be wrong on that. But you might be a racist, Jason. I'm going to venture a guess that Florida State Senator Jason Brodeur is probably a racist. And guess what? If he wants to fine me $35,000, go for it. Go for it. Good luck collecting that money, my friend. Good luck. And where are we at now when it comes to race relations in this country? Well, I think we might be more divided politically and maybe racially in this country in my lifetime. I'm 43 years old. Who do we have to blame for that? Now, in no way, shape, or form am I saying that Democrats are perfect when it comes to race relations, so on and so forth. But who are the types of people that were protesting for equality? Who are the types of people that were at those Black Lives Matter protests? Who are the types of people that are kneeling? Who are the types of people that want better relationships between law enforcement and citizens in this country? Are they Republicans or are they Democrats? I'm sure there are certainly Republicans out there that want those as well. But overwhelmingly, which party is for equality? Which party is for affirmative action? Which party is for giving opportunities to minorities? Which administration looks more like this country? The Joe Biden administration or the Donald Trump administration? By the way, Donald Trump had the whitest administration in the history of this country. And it was Kevin McCarthy alone that said, boy, this party, the Republican Party, we don't look like America. The Democrat Party looks like America. It's one of the few things that Kevin McCarthy has said that I actually agree with. Where are we at now with race relations in this country? There are still people, many of whom are on the right, that believe Derek Chauvin is innocent, that believe George Zimmerman didn't do anything wrong. There are the Larry Elders of the world and the Candace Owens of the world, who are both phony, by the way, who are opportunists. Larry Elder, who did this show, who says that systemic racism doesn't exist. Do you think Martin Luther King Jr. would agree with that statement? Larry Elder, a black man, says that systemic racism doesn't exist. Can you please explain to me the Ahmaud Arbery murder then, the lynching, where 3 white Klansmen decided to lynch and murder an innocent black man jogging down the street? Oh, but it didn't end there. The entire city put it underneath the rug because the system failed Ahmaud Arbery. And 12 officers, we learned in the trial, saw the actual video of that murder, and they didn't arrest anybody. They didn't do anything. And the only reason why those 3 white, despicable human beings are in jail right now, the only reason, is because one of those dumbasses released the video of the murder to a news station several months after. And even after the police chief and many underneath him saw that video and saw what happened, they lied to Ahmaud Arbery's mother. It wasn't just the 3 people who committed that crime. It was, you see, Mr. Larry Elder, a system that failed Ahmaud Arbery, a system that sometimes fails minorities in this country. Does it mean that this entire country is racist? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that every law enforcement official is racist? No, it doesn't. But we are talking about a system, hence the word systemic racism. And the system failed Ahmaud Arbery, as I mentioned this on Martin Luther King Day. All right, so here's what we are going to do. We are going to switch topics for a little bit anyway. And the guy joining us right now, you might have heard his name before. He's an American influencer, media personality who's known for his outspoken Christian and conservative beliefs. He's also the guy, and this is where I'm definitely on his side, anybody that can defeat Ben Shapiro at anything, I'm very proud of. He defeated Ben Shapiro on Facebook, very popular conservative, and we're very happy to have him on with us to talk about a number of different topics on this caucus day. Of course, I'm talking about Carmine Sabia, who joins us right now on the show. Carmine, I do appreciate you taking the time to join us. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great, man. I'm excited to be here. Just watching some Rocky IV, getting prepared for this, you know.
Those Rocky movies are very, very good. No, I appreciate you being here, Carmine. Thank you so much. Let me start out by saying this. Anybody who could defeat Ben Shapiro at anything, I'm very proud of that. What has that been like for you to be the many views that you have on Facebook, the popularity that you have starting out with not a lot of employees and to where you're at today? How do you get there?
You know what, man? It's if I had a formula, I'd bottle it and sell it. I don't know. I come from the inner city. I come from North New Jersey. Um, was raised pretty lower middle class or poor, if you will. My mom, she fought and struggled to get us out of there, and in real estate and whatnot. And I just kind of expounded on that. And I always loved politics, and so I'll be honest with you. I started in professional wrestling. I was a professional wrestling promoter, and that was a kid, didn't work out, and you never thought it would. It was just kind of a hobby. And then Twitter comes along, right? And
Mhm.
I just start talking trash on Twitter. And I go for celebrities. Like that's who I go for. I get beeline. I'm not dealing with regular people. I'm going for celebrities.
Right.
And these left wing celebrities, your Rosie O'Donnell's is that, Alyssa Milano, they would hit me back, retweet me, and fight me. And I always thought it was weird because you have nothing to gain by fighting me. I'm nobody at this time, but you're amplifying me and I'm gaining these followers. And so I owe a lot to a lot of left wing celebrities who amplified me. And then all of a sudden, some company calls like, "Hey, you want to write for us?" And I'm like, "I've never written before, but I was really good in English. Let's give it a shot." And so writing parlays into a dozen or 10 years later.
Uh-oh, Carmine, did we lose you? Carmine, I think we lost the feed there, my friend. Carmine, I think you lost your audio, my friend. Maybe we can get you back. Having some technical difficulties. Carmine Sabia joining us, American influencer, media personality. As I mentioned before, we lost him. We'll get him back there. I have no doubt about that. I did want to ask him about. By the way, that's interesting. I didn't know that Carmine got his start from going after left-wing celebrities. That is very, very interesting. That's something about him that I didn't know. Plenty of other stuff to get to with Carmine Sabia, but we're going to get him back on here in just a few minutes. I think we lost. There's a lot to talk about today, by the way. Today is caucus day. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this new Roger Stone audio that just came out. We're going to get into that. Does the caucus mean anything? Donald Trump is still the front runner, obviously. Who will have the best caucus day? We'll talk a little bit about that. More things that Vivek Ramaswamy has said today that we will get to as well. And, it's interesting because in talking about the caucus, and we'll get Carmine Sabia back on with us, I have no doubt, to continue the conversation. Donald Trump is the front runner. Nobody's going to defeat Donald Trump. I don't care what type of caucus Ron DeSantis has. I don't care what type of caucus Nikki Haley has. I don't care what type of caucus Vivek Ramaswamy has. The bottom line here is that Donald Trump is the front runner for the Republican Party. It's going to be Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and unless something very, very strange happens, I don't see that changing one bit. I really don't. And I think I'm speaking obviosities here. But we'll see how the caucus day goes today. We will find out. I think it's just probably a matter of time before Ron DeSantis drops out. Chris Christie just dropped out the other day. I don't think Ron DeSantis is going to have a very good caucus. That's my personal opinion. We'll have to wait and see how this kind of plays out as we go along here. And, the bottom line here is that most of America does not want to see Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I, for one of them, do not either. And I've made my opinions very, very clear on this. And that is, I don't care who Donald Trump is running against, quite frankly. I'll choose anybody for the most part over Donald Trump in the Democrat Party today, for the most part. I would never vote for Donald Trump. But with that being said, I know that Joe Biden's poll numbers haven't been great, but I don't really look at poll numbers. I mean, the last time I looked at poll numbers were back in 2016, when Hillary Clinton, all these polls were Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide for the most part. And I'm sorry, but, I don't look at poll numbers and put much into it. That's just me. I don't put anything really into polls these days. I know that Joe Biden's poll numbers are not great. I understand that. But it depends which poll you look at. And Joe Biden answers that accordingly. Some polls say certain things, other polls say certain things. I don't put much credence into poll numbers these days at all. If you're just joining us, Carmine Sabia was just with us. He's having some phone issues. He just texted me. He'll be back. Media personality, pretty popular conservative, outspoken Christian, and plenty of conservative beliefs that he has, not afraid of sharing opinion-wise on social media. And I did want to mention this to him because he will be joining us. We're got some technical issues with him. He will be coming back. Politico said he had some of the worst takes of 2023 by any conservative. So I do want to ask him about that. And as I mentioned earlier in the program, I've been going back and forth on Twitter and through text message with Roger Stone. I've challenged Roger Stone because this tape apparently was out there and a tape where Roger Stone, at least the reporting was that Roger Stone threatening to go after a few Democrat congressmen, threatening to kill them. And he tweeted at me, "What tape? Play the tape. Where's the tape?" "Oh, there is no tape." "Oh, yes, there is, Mr. Stone. Yes, there is. There is a tape out there." So we will play that for you a little bit later on in the program. And Roger Stone now coming up with another excuse and another lie. So it really is somewhat mesmerizing to me. All right, let's take a few phone calls while we wait for Carmine Sabia to join us. We had some phone issues earlier. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you want to be a part of the show, waiting for Carmine Sabia to join us. He had some technical issues there. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, 702-221-7283. Let's start off with Nelson. Nelson, what's going on? Nelson, are you there? Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Well, that's cool. I'm sure he will appreciate that. We'll get Carmine back on the line with us. Are you? You have any questions about? I guess you could say caucus day. Is anything up in the air for you, or do you think it doesn't really matter and Donald Trump's going to be the front runner anyway? Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Well, you're right. You're right. It's and Nelson, you're right. You're absolutely right. I appreciate the call, by the way. Yeah, saying to any for any parent to move on when it comes to your kids getting shot and killed in a school is pretty absurd. All right, let's get back to our guest. We had some technical difficulties earlier there. Carmine Sabia joining us back on. Carmine, can you hear me? Okay.
I'm sorry about that.
Totally
Phone.
okay. Not a problem, my friend. I can hear you loud and clear now. I appreciate you coming back on with us. All right, Carmine, let's get right back into it. Okay, let's get right into it now. Explain to me, because this is what frustrates me, and not really frustrates, but I don't understand it. I got to pick your brain on this. A conservative man who calls himself a Christian, why would you be so supportive over a man who is a liable rapist in the courtroom? Explain that to me.
Okay, so I reject the rapist thing.
Well, he's a civilly liable rapist. You can reject it, but it was still proven in a court of law, right?
No, it wasn't civilly liable for rape. It was
Sexual assault.
for sexual assault, lying about sexual assault.
Okay.
And that's just one judge's opinion. I mean, I don't.
There's a jury, right?
No, there was no jury.
So it was a judge who heard the evidence. Correct.
Yeah.
You're right. Judge who heard the evidence found him civilly liable of sexual assault. You have 25 other women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, including his ex-wife in court documents, and then he paid her off. So that's fine. If you choose to not believe any of these women and you think they're all liars.
No, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't necessarily don't believe the women. I have the same argument about Bill Cosby.
Right, but you didn't vote for Bill Cosby. You voted for Donald Trump.
Well, I vote for Bill Cosby when I watch the Cosby Show.
Right, but I understand that, but you get my point, though. You're a big Trump supporter, right?
Absolutely.
You haven't been afraid to share your opinions on that. And as a Christian man, my question to you is, if you don't necessarily believe all these women are lying,
Sure.
and as much, and I know that you're a Republican, you're a conservative. I get it. You don't like Joe Biden. You don't like the Biden administration. But do you hate the Biden administration and Democrats so much that you would still vote for a man who might be a sexual assaulter?
But Joe Biden might be a sexual assaulter. He's been credibly accused.
by one person, and he's never in a courtroom been proven to have done anything wrong. He's never been. There was one woman that accused him of sexual assault, and she changed her story multiple times. Do you think that's a fair equivalence, Joe Biden, to the way he treats women compared to Donald Trump?
I think you're talking about. I think you're talking about two imperfect men. I don't know that. I don't know for a fact that Trump has actually sexually assaulted anybody. Had Trump admitted to sexual assault, had there been some hard evidence of sexual assault, that would change my perspective. But at the same time, um, I look at the greater good, Brian. I look at the greater good. So for me, as a Christian, abortion is top of the list, paramount issue. Um, and I have experience there. You know, me and you get into a little personal. Me and this girl were trying to get pregnant. We did get pregnant.
Mhm.
Out, she had an abortion without my knowledge. Had no say in it.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's very personal to me. It's deeply personal. It was personal to me before that.
Mhm.
Um, Putting three judges on the Supreme Court that are going to rule consistently conservative for generations to come, the greater good outweighs what any negatives there are. So with Trump, it's the same with me with any politician, right? I believe as a Christian, God puts people in positions of power, including, I mean, it's going as far as I'm talking about Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot. He puts people in positions of power
So you
for,
think God? So you think God put Donald Trump in power?
I think God put every single United States president in power
If
ever.
there is, and by the way, I'm not an atheist. I don't consider myself an extremely religious person, but I do believe in God, and I guess that might be where we disagree. If there is a God out there, I don't think God wanted a person in office that dodges the military, that attacks POWs, that attacks women on looks, that attacks minorities, that once said, "I don't want black people counting my money in my casinos. I want Jews counting my money." I'm pretty, and this is maybe where we disagree. I'm confident that if there is a God out there, he probably didn't want this man to be the leader of the free world. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm sure you disagree with me on that.
You'd have to, first of all, you'd have to subscribe to the belief that God wants everybody in power who's perfect or righteous, and the Bible shows consistently that's not the case. And
Nobody's perfect. I agree with you. Nobody's perfect. But
the people,
we're not talking about the perfect person. We're talking about the man who attacks everybody, women on looks, attacks minorities, has kids with multiple women. Uh,
I mean, I don't see that. I don't see that. I don't see him attacking minorities. I see his words being twisted when he was talking about people crossing the border, certain people crossing the border. When he says they're not sending their best, he's talking literally about the Mexican government, who has been known to drive criminals to the border and send them over. That's what when he says sending, that's what he's talking about. So he's not talking about people that are crossing necessarily. They're all rapists, of course not. But
Well, no, he said he supposes some of them are good people. And my argument would be no, it's not supposed. The overwhelming majority in general of people that are crossing the border illegal are not violent criminals or rapists. And I've never heard Donald Trump talk like that. He seems to demonize people like the Mexican judge couldn't preside over his case fairly because he's Mexican, even though he was born in this country.
sure, and if you go to my Twitter, I spoke out against that
Right.
actually.
I know you did. Yes.
So there's things that he says that sometimes I cringe, bro. I'm not gonna,
Hmm.
for a better messenger. Yeah, you say I'm a hard Trump supporter, and I do support Trump, but
Right.
my position right now today,
Hmm.
very date, is I support whoever wins the Republican nomination. Not
Even if
en-
they're a convicted felon.
I have not endorsed anybody. He won't be a convicted felon when he wins the nomination. Should he win the nomination? But that
Well,
wouldn't.
because he can pardon himself, that's why. But I'm asking you, if he is a convicted felon before the November elections, would you still support him and vote
I,
for him?
I don't think that would happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the
Mhm.
cases are on track to finish in that kind of time. And let's face it,
Mhm.
Fannie Willis got her own criminal problems right now, paying the guy $650,000. Never tried a case in his life. She's got her own problems. She might be on RICO pretty soon.
Yeah, but I mean that's deflection, though. Let's talk about Donald Trump in general terms. You don't think any of this is fair? The 91 felony counts against him, defying a subpoena for a year.
I don't.
Um,
I'll tell
you,
you
you,
what.
yeah, go ahead.
I could run you a list if you gave me a few days to look at it. I could run you of indictable crimes that many ex-presidents we could say committed, right? During the term of their presidency. I don't believe in presidential immunity. And
All right,
I
well,
think
let's go with Barack Obama. What crimes do you think he should have been indicted on, and did he defy a subpoena for a year?
he didn't defy a subpoena, but you could absolutely, if you were a hard right wing judge, you could absolutely, or attorney, you
Mhm.
could absolutely indict him on the drone strikes that killed innocent civilians. You could absolutely indict him on those errant drone strikes. And he used drone strikes more than any president
Right,
before.
but I think the argument would be there, those drone strikes were not designed so they can kill innocent people. I think you would agree with me on that. I think there's a
Well,
defined difference between trying to kill innocent people and innocent people dying when you're trying to go after
well,
terrorists.
sure, but your car's not designed to kill innocent people either. But if you accidentally hit somebody and you're drunk, you got vehicular manslaughter
Right.
charge.
Right, but last I checked, Obama wasn't committing those drone strikes when he was drunk, and he didn't put the orders in because he was on drugs or he was drunk. I mean, so I'm trying to understand why that's an
I'm
indictable offense, but
not saying you should. What I'm saying is
yeah,
you
right.
could get a president on almost anything after their time in office. There's a reason we don't do it. I think these crimes are so nonsensical. The document case I think is absolutely ridiculous, and the Presidential Records Act probably covers most of it. And
Well,
if it doesn't,
mhm.
is it worth indicting him
Well,
for? That's
that's maybe where we disagree a little bit. I think it's ridiculous when you take these documents to Mar-a-Lago and you show the most classified documents, caught on audio, by the way, with people that don't have any security clearance. I would define that as ridiculous. Defining a subpoena for a year. Listen, the case in New York City, I'll give you that. It's probably a little bit politically motivated. I don't know whether he committed campaign finance violations or not. I think that's probably the weakest case. But then we have Jack Smith, as you know. He went after John Edwards. He's prosecuted Democrats too. So I don't understand why people call it, I'm not saying you particular, but the Biden DOJ. This is a guy who's gone after Democrats as well. I guess that's what confuses me a little bit. Help me with that.
headhunter. It's not partisan for him. He's a headhunter. He's looking to get trophies on his wall. He's a top attorney. I think he's overreached here tremendously, but I'm not an attorney.
Mhm.
So, and I always say that in my videos to people, it's like, I'm not an attorney.
Right.
You
Neither am I.
can't give you constitutional law. I can't sit here and say,
Mhm.
because I'll listen to one attorney on one channel say, oh, they got him dead to rights. And then I turn on another channel and, oh, this is a crap case. And
Right.
these are, good attorneys that have argued in front of the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
like with nice people. I watch CNN mostly.
Mhm.
It's a channel I watch probably 20 hours a day.
Really?
And
Wow.
my favorite guy to actually listen to case law from and to who I think calls balls and strikes better than anybody is a gentleman named Ellie Honig
Mhm.
on CNN. And he calls
Yep.
balls and the negative and the positive for Trump, for everybody.
Sure.
I think he's the best on TV right now. I think he's the one without an agenda, a clear agenda. He's just saying, here's what I think the law is. Here's what I think the problems of the case are. Here's
Mhm.
the strong points of the case. But as far as the cases against Trump, so I want to answer your question. I don't
Sure.
want to do a politician thing and dodge your question. Your question
No,
is,
that's okay. Yep.
if he's convicted on these charges, yeah, I'd still vote for convicted felon if that convicted felon is Donald Trump. Now, were he convicted felony, if he were convicted criminally of rape, of murder, of assault,
What about the Espionage Act? What if he's convicted of a felony of breaking the Espionage Act as a president of the United States? You're telling me you would still vote for him?
I'd have to see the evidence of Espionage Act. I mean, did he give secrets to a foreign government? If he did that, no, then all bets are off.
Okay, well, that's definitely a possibility. That's the only reason why I bring that up. Let me ask you another question. Let's talk a little bit about January 6th. It bothers certain people more than others. It certainly bothers me, not because I'm a liberal or Democrat, because I'm not. I think that was a very embarrassing day for this country. So let me ask you a question. You haven't put any responsibility, and many conservatives have not, on Donald Trump. If Donald Trump doesn't say the election was stolen months before, which it wasn't, we can talk about that. If Donald Trump didn't say that the Democrats cheated and Joe Biden cheated, does January 6th happen? Yes or no?
No,
It
no.
doesn't. Okay, so we agree on that. So why is it then that Donald Trump shouldn't be held accountable then for January 6th? What took place? At least partially accountable.
Sure, Donald Trump clearly told them to behave peacefully and march to peacefully protest. So when you look at it from that perspective, when there's a police shooting of a black person, let's
Mhm.
use that as an example, right?
Okay.
And Al Sharpton comes out and said, we're going to have a march in the streets. We're going to march. We want justice. Okay. I support everybody's right to protest.
Mhm.
And then that march turns violent.
Mhm.
Now, would those people have been there if not for Al Sharpton? And even though he was having a peaceful march, some people broke away and did the wrong thing. Should Al Sharpton be held criminally liable?
No, and here's why. I'll answer that because I think it's very different. And I think it's a false analogy, because when there's an injustice that takes place, or someone claims that there's actual real injustice, not the 2020 election, which was a free and fair election, and you say, let's protest that. And there's a fine line between protesting for equality and protesting based on a lie that the 2020 election was stolen, which it wasn't. Donald Trump still lies about that. There's still millions of people in this country that still believe that the 2020 election was rigged. It wasn't. It was a free and fair election, and Donald Trump knew it.
How old are you, Brian?
43 years old.
Okay, so you're around my.
Yep.
You're from the West Coast originally?
East Coast, Connecticut originally.
Beautiful. Then you must remember the 1980s, a police officer in New York killed himself after being persecuted and his name dragged through the mud for sexually assaulting a young woman named Tawana Brawley. And that was pushed by Al Sharpton. Turns out Tawana Brawley was lying. And Al Sharpton was never held accountable for this officer killing himself.
And he should have been, but I don't think two wrongs make a right. And Al Sharpton was never the president of the United States. I know exactly the case you're talking about. It's despicable. And I have serious issues with Al Sharpton. But why is it when I talk about Donald Trump, with all due respect, you want to bring up somebody else? Because I do that with Trump supporters all the time, and they immediately want to talk about Joe Biden. I'm talking about the man who was the president of the United States, former president now, who continues to lie about the 2020 election, when we've learned almost everybody around him said, no, Mr. President, you lost the election fair and square.
Well, let me stop you. Fair and square and on the level and all that stuff, I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I don't believe the election was stolen. Let me be upfront and clear. I believe Joe Biden is the president of the United States legitimately, got the votes legitimately. My issue, and it's not Trump's issue, this is if Trump articulated this issue, I think I had a lot more ground to stand on than saying it was rigged and ballot boxes were stuffed, which I think is crazy.
Nonsense. Yeah.
Did not happen. But if he had argued that these states violated their state constitutions, that there was mass mail-in voting that never took place before, and that changed the outcome of the election, I can believe that. I firmly believe.
Right, but because we were in a global pandemic, though. That's why.
Sure, but I think if we're in a global pandemic and we all knew it, right?
Right.
If I want to vote, then I can request my mail-in ballot. That wouldn't be an issue for me. But if I'm so apathetic that I don't have the time to even request a mail-in ballot, then how on top of the issues am I that I need to get a ballot sent to me and have my hand held to vote? You know, they say we want more people voting. I say absolutely not.
Well, Donald Trump told people not to mail in ballot vote. He told people not to do that. And I would also say we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And if anybody can show me actual real evidence, which nobody has to this point, that because of those mail-in ballots, there was something called widespread voter fraud. And I'm not saying you believe this, Carmine, that could have changed the outcome of the election. Then I'll start listening. The problem I have, Carmine, and I think you'll just hear me out on this, 2016, Trump was saying the same stuff without a global pandemic. He said Democrats were going to cheat, Hillary was going to cheat, and the election was going to be rigged. Then something happened. Donald Trump won. And then for the next 3 years, I didn't hear from any conservatives out there, including you, that the elections are rigged and that the election was stolen. No, because Donald Trump won. So I guess everything was fair. And then Donald Trump did it again because he has no credibility and he can't admit that he lost anything in life. In this case, the 2020 election. Because of that, people died. We had something called January 6th, and the president continues to lie about the election. And I think it's a threat to our democracy. I really do.
You got me on something where I don't really support this. If you were to go back and look at my tweets from January 6th, 2021, I used the words embarrassing, humiliating, disgraceful. I was horrified.
And I appreciate that because not every conservative speaks out like that. And I appreciate you saying those things.
I actually got a lot of flack for it, but it was the world is watching and we look like clowns. And so I didn't appreciate that. I understood their anger, and I think that the protesting was fine. Yell, shout, hold your signs.
Legal. Yeah, it's legal.
All that.
Right.
You start busting in windows, when you start going into the Capitol, when you start going into Nancy Pelosi's office, into the Senate chamber, into the House chamber, no, then you've committed crimes and you should be punished. Those people are not hostages. People who, if anybody, I'm not aware of them, but if anybody was arrested for protesting that did not actually violate any laws.
Yeah, Not the
I
case. Yeah, not, I hear what you're saying. Not the case. But then you have the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, who I know you're not a huge fan of either,
not at all.
who wants these people out of jail. They've been you know, I just I miss you know I don't understand the far right feeling such sympathy for some of these individuals who I believe are terrorists who attacked police officers. I know not everybody did that. I had the shaman guy on, and you know I've had these people on, but I don't understand why there are so many people on the far right that call it a tourist visit. I know you're not one of those people, Carmine. I just think, you know, some people committed some horrible, violent crimes that day, and they need to be held to account for it. And I don't know why all conservatives can't agree with that.
Or the guy that hit the police officer with a fire
Right.
extinguisher.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't know what I don't know about that. Was there I know that police officers were being beaten with their own batons, and we've seen video of officers being sprayed with bear spray and been beaten with an American flag, who, by the way, a Republican in office today is defending. We've seen the videos. You've seen it. I've seen it.
yeah. No, those are horrible,
Yeah,
horrible things. Never
sure.
def- They should be in prison. They should be punished to the full extent of the law. So should the people calling in swatting against Marjorie Taylor Greene and against Jack Smith and against,
Mhm.
Isha James, I believe was, or no, or
Right.
had
Mhm.
bomb threats. What's
Right.
going on? What's going on? Like
Oh,
I come from a time where political discourse was more like what we're having right now,
sure.
less like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you an answer, and you might not like it. MAGA. Okay. I don't believe we had so much division.
I disagree. I disagree. Are we frozen? Are you frozen? Somebody's frozen. I'm not sure what's going on.